flight seems like the ultimate advantage in nature. It allows animals to escape predators, travel long distances, find food, and reach places that are otherwise impossible to access. From the outside, flight looks like the final upgrade, something evolution would never give up once it was achieved. And yet, across Earth's history, many animals that once flew have done something that seems completely illogical. They stopped flying. Not because they failed, not because they were weak, but because in certain environments, flight slowly stopped being useful. And when an ability no longer provides an advantage, evolution has no reason to protect it. Flying is one of the most expensive abilities an animal can have. It requires enormous amounts of energy just to stay airborne. Bones must be lightweight and often hollow. Chest muscles must be massive relative to body size. Metabolism has to run fast, which means constant feeding. A flying animal is always paying a high biological cost. As long as flight saves lives, helps find food, or avoids danger, that cost is worth it. But when the environment changes, the balance shifts. Flight stops being a benefit and starts becoming an unnecessary burden. Nowhere does this happen more clearly than on islands. Islands are strange evolutionary worlds. They often lack large predators, have limited competition, and concentrate food in small areas. When a flying animal arrives on an isolated island, the rules it evolved under suddenly disappear. There is nothing chasing it. There is no need to flee. Food is often available on the ground. In this new environment, flying no longer provides the same survival advantage it once did. At first, nothing dramatic happens. The animals can still fly, but generation after generation, small changes begin to accumulate. Individuals that spend more time on the ground conserve energy. They don't need to maintain massive flight muscles. They can grow slightly heavier bodies, stronger legs, and invest more energy into reproduction instead of flight. These individuals survive just a bit better and leave more offspring. Those that continue flying as much as their ancestors burn unnecessary energy. Over thousands of years, natural selection quietly favors the grounded lifestyle. As this process continues, wings begin to shrink, flight muscles weaken, bones become denser and heavier. Eventually, the species crosses a point of no return. Flying is no longer possible, even if it suddenly becomes necessary again. What was once an optional behavior becomes a lost ability. Evolution doesn't remove flight all at once. It lets it fade away slowly, generation by generation, until it's gone. The dodo is the most famous example of this process. Its ancestors were flying pigeons that reached the island of Mauritius, a place with no major land predators. For thousands of years, the dodo lived in an environment where flight offered no advantage. It grew larger and heavier. Its wings shrank. Its lifestyle became entirely ground-based. Flight disappeared, not because the dodo was poorly adapted, but because it was perfectly adapted to a world without danger. When humans arrived, they brought predators with them. Dogs, pigs, and rats turned the island into a hostile place almost overnight. But by then, evolution could not reverse what it had already optimized. The dodo's flight was gone forever. What happened to the dodo was not unusual. Flight has been lost many times across evolutionary history. Rails are one of the most extreme examples. These small birds have independently lost flight on dozens of islands around the world. In many cases, the same pattern repeats. The birds arrive, predators are absent, flight becomes unnecessary, and wings slowly lose their function. What looks like repeated failure is actually evolution responding perfectly to local conditions. Even bats, the only mammals capable of true flight, have followed this path. On certain islands, bats evolved into forms that barely fly or rely heavily on crawling and climbing. When food becomes easy to access and danger is minimal, the extreme cost of flight no longer makes sense. Short glides or limited movement become enough. Flight, once again, fades away. Penguins represent a different kind of loss. They didn't give up flight because it wasn't needed. They gave it up because something else worked better. In the ocean, Wings became tools for swimming rather than flying. Dense bones, powerful strokes, and streamlined bodies made penguins incredibly efficient underwater hunters. In this case, flight wasn't removed because of safety, but because it interfered with a more successful strategy. Wings weren't lost, they were rewritten. The same principle applies again and again across nature. Evolution does not aim to create the most impressive animal. It creates the most efficient one for the current environment. If flying wastes energy, it disappears. If wings interfere with survival, they change. If an ability no longer improves reproductive success, it fades, no matter how powerful it once seemed. This reveals a deeper truth about evolution. It has no memory and no foresight. It doesn't plan for future threats. It doesn't preserve abilities just in case. Evolution only responds to what exists right now. If flight is unnecessary today, it will be reduced, even if losing it becomes deadly tomorrow. That is why some animals gave up flight, not because flight was a mistake, but because evolution is ruthless in its efficiency. In safe worlds, wings become wasteful. In stable environments, unnecessary abilities vanish. And when the world changes faster than evolution can respond, what was once a perfect adaptation can suddenly become a fatal weakness. Flight was never guaranteed to last forever. It only survives as long as it remains useful.